welcome to Module 1, where we're going to talk about some background a little bit. So we're going to first start talking in this presentation about what is IO psychology, and then we'll move forward with the rest of the module in later videos. Okay? So what is IO psychology? I mean, we could give a formal definition, feel free to read it at all, but I mean, the idea is it's the study of how people get along, how they do their jobs effectively. It's this. And so the real way to understand a definition of IO psychology is to kind of think, what does it study? So IO stands for industrial organizational, and these are technically two different disciplines that are often worked together. I've heard of organizational psychology as a degree, completely independent from the industrial side, but they're often highly related. And there's not a 100% clear distinction between what is the I and what is the O, but the I side is a lot of the human resources stuff. That is, who to hire, who to fire, how do you measure performance in an annual review, how do you know who needs training, these kinds of things. Whereas organizational side is dealing with the workers themselves. That is to say, motivation, attitudes, leadership questions, even group work, how best to organize groups in the workforce, but also in a more rigid sense, organizational development, which we won't get to until the very last topic or module. And organizational development being questions of things such as, how should I structure the organization? Should I have one president and 5 vice presidents and then regional managers underneath them? Or what's the most efficient way to get it done? Okay, so we'll talk about some of that. Okay. So the main professional organization in IO psychology is SIOP, right? The Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology. And SIOP, and it emphasizes the scientist practitioner model. Okay, that is to say, it is a practitioner in the sense that they're going to apply information, but they must first and foremost be scientists. And so what's going to happen is that IO psychologists are going to have a research-based education, that they will have a grounding in how science works before they attempt to apply that knowledge. Okay? Yes, IO psychologists have KSAs. By the way, we're going to use that word many times. KSAs, knowledge, skills, and aptitudes. And so they have competencies or KSAs that allow them to effectively work with people. Okay. Most IO psychologists have either master's degrees or PhDs. Absolutely. I don't know how you could be an IO psychologist without a master's degree. So a minimum of 2 years of graduate training, but 5 years if you're at the PhD level. And yeah, usually is going to involve theses and dissertations, so research-based. Okay. So here are some of the broad areas that might be covered, and we're going to, cover a lot of these. Things like consumer behavior. We're not going to necessarily cover consumer behavior, but that would be a fun one. Okay. But criterion development, all right, ethical issues. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things like how do you define job performance? Obviously, we want our workers to have a high level of performance. What do you mean by performance? Do you mean producing a lot of products? Okay, that's good performance. But what if the problem is people are making lots of products, but there's lots of mistakes? Oh, shoot. Okay, so performance has to include how many products and what's the quality of the products. Okay, but at the same time, your employees are influencing each other. And if one person is negatively impacting their coworkers, then all of a sudden maybe their performance, even if they're producing many products and they're high quality, but behaviors that they're exhibiting is knocking everybody else down, well, that's not good performance either. So all kinds of interesting things related to performance and selection, assessment of individuals, job evaluation, make some decisions about how much you should pay people for jobs. There's just so many team processes, analyzing data, personnel recruitment. Yeah, we're going to get to recruitment. So many competencies. So IO psychologists, they emphasize both research and the practice. 42% of people with advanced degrees are professors employed by universities, and that would be the PhD level people, not the master's degree people. 20% work in private organizations, 4% nonprofit, 9% government, and a whole lot in consulting firms. Okay, and many of those, by the way, from my experiences, many of those that are professors in universities are also working in consulting firms. So it's not one or the other. It's kind of both. Okay? So some of the biggest areas involve selection, trying to figure out who we should hire. Training, yeah, when a worker is hired, usually you're going to have to train them on some specific skill set to your organization, or training in the sense that at some point down the line, you're going to have to evaluate employees, find deficiencies, and create training programs to address those deficiencies. Okay? Things like organizational development, absolutely. Performance appraisal. Oh, this is a big one, and this is in many ways, trying to decide, who should get a raise, right? But more so also deciding if somebody needs to be terminated. And so this performance appraisal part is one of the places, and the selection side, where we're going to find an intersection with the legal system, right? With employment discrimination laws, etc. Okay? We're going to talk about quality of work-life balance. We're going to talk about things like flex time, hybrid models of work, etc. Okay? And then finally, human factors, which is actually quite fascinating, and that is to look at the interplay between human beings and technology, and then modifying technology to best fit the human being. So that's a cool area too. Okay? So why is IO psychology important? Think about it. If you ask me who am I might come up with, husband and father. Those might be, some of my first thoughts. But if you pushed me, it wouldn't be very far down the list that I said I am a professor. So clearly, my occupation is my identity. Okay, and it turns out what's interesting is that the right job. I don't want to be touchy-feely, but Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, and the goal in life is to become self-actualized. And our occupation clearly is a part of that self-actualization process, okay? And so here's a statement that we're going to come back to many times. Hugo Münsterberg, who is often considered to be the father of IO psychology, he said there's no such thing as a bad job. There's bad placement of people into jobs. So every job, no matter how crappy you think it is, somebody's going to love it, okay? So much of IO psychology involves making work better, okay? Excellent.